We are here today with three people who have experienced the amazing and miraculous power of God in their life firsthand. We have with us here Minoli, our star Devin, and his sister Minelli to tell us their story of how God has come through for them in the most amazing way. So, Minoli, if you could just tell me a bit about where you come from, what your family is like, and your background.
This is my daughter and son, and we are a Christian family. They've been brought up in a Christian environment, and we've always believed in God. But when I was pregnant, I developed rubella, which in the third month, and I was asked to abort the child. But believing in God and trusting in God, we decided not to do that. And when he was born hearing impaired. We actually discovered that maybe in the second month because he was not responding. And we took him to London, did all the possible tests, and they proved that I have all the reports that he's totally hearing impaired. It was a profound hearing loss.
Minoli, if you could tell me a bit about Devin's hearing condition, what the doctors have said, what the reports have said, what their diagnosis was, and when it all began.
It was an absolute profound to severe to profound hearing loss, where he could hear absolutely nothing. But God blessed him. Although he was hearing impaired, he could lip read, and he was a brilliant child. Okay, so he could lip read, and he managed life that way. But he went to school only till about grade 4, because it was very difficult for him to manage with the other children. So we home tutored him. But he was very sharp. He used to work on the computer and things like that. God really blessed him in that way and gave us also the grace to go on, Otherwise, it's a very difficult thing with a hearing impaired child.
So you told me earlier that medically what was wrong was that
yes,
the nerve.
From the nerve from the ear to the brain was not functioning. So there was nothing we could do. That's the way he was.
A couple of trips.
We went to London, and yes, there was nothing that could be a nerve. It was a nerve problem.
Minoli, when did you first realize that Devin was beginning to hear?
It's amazing. About 4 weeks ago, actually, as I told you, we got comfortable with this loss and we were going through life. Andrew, because Devin used to work for Mimshak and Andrew is the head there. He decided to take Devin up for prayer. He had this burden for Devin. He's very fond of Devin. And I was not at the CNC service that particular Wednesday. And Andrew had taken Devin up for prayer. And Pastor prayed for him. That was about 4 weeks ago. And thereafter, Andrew kept asking me if there's any difference, but I didn't see any difference. 2 weeks ago, when I was there with Devin, now Devin is the photographer there. So after the service, he came back and said he had a severe headache, that the sound was far too much. But still, I didn't realize anything. I said, I thought he's just tired. And I said, you go to sleep, you'll be okay the next morning. And that was fine. But last Wednesday, during the worship, he came to me and he said he can hear the sound from the worship, from the front as well as the back. So like that hit me, but I was in shock. Then when Andrew came a little later, he had gone running to Andrew. He's so fond of him, had gone and said, I can hear, and then Andrew brought him to give his testimony.
This is a mighty testimony. 4 weeks ago, you prayed for Devin. You called people who couldn't hear, and Devin came. And this evening, when I walked into the auditorium, Devin just came running and told me, I can hear a little. It had just begun. And I just want to praise him.
That's how it all happened. And even now, like when he goes to office, he says he heard the sound of a bus. He goes to office by bus, you know. I have always tried to make him as normal as possible. And he said the bus horn, it's a bell. He heard it like a bell. He hears a dog barking, things like that. So it's amazing. It's coming back slowly.
Finally, what would you have to say to individuals or parents who are going through a similar situation as you once did?
Oh, just to trust. Put your total trust in God, in Jesus Christ, you know. This was an impossible thing, you know, and the possible has happened. So just to trust in Jesus.
Minelli, you happen to be a doctor of medicine. So if you could just give us a bit of maybe the medical history and the medical condition as a doctor would see it of what your brother has been experiencing.
As my mom mentioned, during the 3rd month of her pregnancy, they diagnosed that she was having rubella. And usually what happens with rubella or German measles is that the child that is born suffers extensive both physical and mental damage. So I think the first miracle was that my brother is physically, as you can see, completely normal. And the only effect was that his auditory nerve, or the nerve that runs between his ear and brain, was not functioning at all. So basically no sound was going to be transmitted to his brain since the time he was born.
Devin, you couldn't hear anything earlier, but now little by little, what can you hear now?
Before can't you?
You couldn't hear anything at all.
Now can you?
Okay.
Touch and worship.
Worship music. You can hear worship music. What else? The piano.
Can you?
Okay.
And
What else? Drums. Okay, you can hear the drums.
and when touch
The bell, the bass horn. You heard the bass horn
dog
recently.
bark.
You heard the dogs barking. So you're hearing so much,
And we can talk and before can't talk.
you couldn't talk like this
And you-
before.
Now we can talk.
We are so thankful to God for everything He is doing and has done and will continue to do in Devin's life and his mom's life and his sister's life. And it's just a glimpse of the greatness of our God, and there is just no limit to how much He can bless us and the things He can do for us. So this is just a glimpse of God's glory in the life of this family.
As you can see behind me, it's an absolutely beautiful day, and I'm sitting right here in a beautiful home. But what's more beautiful is the sight that's before me. I'm sitting here today with an absolutely wonderful miracle, Jedediah and his mom, Roni, and they're going to tell us about something wonderful that happened to them just a couple of months ago. So Roni, to start off, before we get into the story, we'd like to know a little bit about your family and a little bit about yourself as well.
Well, my name's Shirani, and I have my mom and dad. They're back in Dubai. I'm here alone. I came to Sri Lanka about a year back, and I started attending KRC and coming for the Colombo Needs Christ just last year. So it's been a year since I've come here.
Give us a description of what exactly your son's condition was when he was first diagnosed and how it all began.
Well, I didn't know I was pregnant for 9 months, and then suddenly when I found out, I had no antenatal care. So of course we were expecting a child not complete, and I had him on the 2nd of October, and he was born with a disease called respiratory distress syndrome, which basically the child is born without lungs. So when he takes his first breath, he starts throwing up blood, and he couldn't breathe, and they put him on life support, and they gave him an injection which was supposed to make his lungs grow, but it did not work. And the very next day after he was born, we had to transfer him to a government hospital because the private hospital said that they can't do anything, and they gave up on him.
Basically, when you first learned about, or when the doctors first told you about his condition, what else did they say? What kind of diagnosis was it that they had right from the beginning?
Well, he was born slightly preterm, so they said they couldn't do anything for him. They gave up, and this is the best doctors in Sri Lanka, and they said that there's no hope, and the exact words they used was "Balapuruttu tiyagandepa." They said don't have any hope, and that's it. And I conditioned my mind. I said, okay, if I'm losing my son, I don't want him to suffer, and I just want him to have a peaceful death.
What you're looking at right now in my hands is the actual reports from the hospitals, and I think once Rohini explains, it'll be pretty clear as to what the doctors had said. Rohini, this I believe is the very first X-ray, so if you could tell us what exactly shows on this one.
This was taken about 2 hours after he was born. He was born without lungs, so it's really white, there's no lungs, and he had bled into his stomach, so that's his stomach. And his whole pelvic area, it was just filled with blood, and that's the reason why he was throwing up blood.
Mm-hmm. And the second one that I have here.
That's after Terry prayed for him, and the very next day they took an X-ray, and the blood had cleared up, and he has lungs. He's just started growing lungs.
All right. Some of the other reports that I have here also indicates on the 13th of October that Jedediah was actually born with a brain injury evidence. That's exactly what it says here. But then again, after prayer on the 18th, it shows that he's absolutely normal. Would you like to explain and tell us about what exactly happened when he was in the incubator and when the ministry team was praying for him?
Well, when I had emailed Pastor Jerome and I said, all I ever wrote was my son is dying. That was the subject and that was the body, that everything was just my son is dying. And a few hours later, Pastor Terry called and said, well, I'm going to come and pray for your son. I said, okay, well, he's at the hospital. And we went, and while praying, he said, in 7 days, Jedediah is going to be home. And I was like, he can't be home in 7 days. But I still kept quiet and I said, okay, fine, I'm going to pray for him as well. And the very next day, the improvement started. He had, at 6 o'clock in the morning, the nurse called and said, your son is hungry, come and he needs milk. I said, well, he's in an incubator, he doesn't need milk. And they said, no, he's awake. He's gotten off the life support by himself, he's breathing by himself, and he's hungry. So I went the very next day, I gave him milk, and then it just started from there. And on the fifth day, he was transferred to the regular ward, and they said that he's fine, but he still has to stay in hospital for some time. And I kind of lost hope at that point. And on the 7th day, I called Pastor Terry. I said, well, it is the 7th day, and we're still in hospital. And then the exact thing he said was, the 7th day is not over yet. I said, okay, and I hung up. And that night, as I put him to sleep in the hospital cot, and then I was sitting in the mother's room, and the nurse and the doctor comes up at 11:30 in the night and says, well, Rohini, your son can go home tomorrow. I was so happy. I said, it's 11:30, just before the 7 days got over, it happened. And I was so ecstatic. I just went to everybody in the hospital. I was telling, well, he's going home, he's going home, he's going home. And everyone was stunned. Everyone was surprised, like, how can he go home? He was in an incubator.
And what is it that the doctors said about it?
The doctors couldn't believe it. Actually, when we transferred him from the private sector to the government sector, his pediatrician said, it's not going to work, it's just give up. And I said, no, I'm not going to give up on my son. That's it. You don't tell me to give up. I'm not going to give up. And even my gynecologist, she being a family friend, she said, Rohini, I don't think you should have hopes because it's going to be hard later. And I said, no, I'm just going to keep it. And when he was cured, to this day, whenever we go to the hospital for a checkup, the doctors, like, we get number 51 turn, and then he goes when it's the 5th turn, because the doctor's like, ara ICU ke baba ne, like, take ara honda vecha baba, ikmanta honda vecha baba. And he's, it's recorded in Sri Lanka, he's the only baby who's been on a high frequency ventilator for 2 weeks, gotten off it himself and lived. The previous child got off it in 12 days and he died after a month. So he's the only one in the whole of Sri Lanka who's now 1 month and he's perfectly fine.
And how is he doing now after a month later?
He's doing very well. We took him for his a test yesterday where they checked to see if his mental status is the same as a 1-month-old, and the doctor said he's far ahead of a regular 1-month-old. He reacts to things, he smiles, he's laughing. He's doing perfectly fine. He's put on weight. When he was born 2.9 kilos, and he lost weight to 1.3. That's really malnourished, and he was just skin and bone. And I brought him home when he was 1.3 kilos, and today it's 3 weeks later, and he's stunning 3.7 kilos. So he's put on a lot of weight since then.
And finally, Roni, what would you like to say to parents who are either going through a similar situation or may for some reason have to face a similar situation in the future?
Well, to parents out there, I think they shouldn't give up. Don't give up. That's the most important thing. Don't give up. And it's faith. If I lost my faith when I was told in 7 days he'd be home, if I lost my faith and gave up at that point, I don't think he would have been home. So the important thing is don't give up, pray. And the second thing is repent. If there's something done wrong, repent. Ask God for forgiveness and say, Lord, don't do this to me. And God, the exact words Pastor used was, the Lord, He's come to give us life and life eternal. So if He gives you something, He's not going to take it away. And if He gives someone life, I don't think He wants to take it away immediately. So that's the most important thing. Don't give up. Just don't give up.